Hello, you beautiful souls. Welcome to Harness the Shift podcast. This is a space where we explore personal transformation, conscious leadership, and the journeys of people who are doing the inner work and bringing that awareness into how they live, lead, and serve. I am your host, Jay. All right, let's see who's joining us today.
Our symptoms that we express in our body are not random. They're linked to the message that our body, our subconscious mind is trying to express. It's a case of I help clients to look at what their symptoms are in their body. I don't like diagnoses because when you get a diagnosis, it's like installing a computer program. So you've got the diagnosis, then you've got all the beliefs around that diagnosis and the life projection around that diagnosis. And it's like, let's just look at the symptoms. What are your symptoms? And what do you think that your body is trying to tell you?
Hello. Welcome to Harness the Shift. My name is Jay and I'm your host. On today's episode, I'm sitting down with Sarah Dawkins, a former registered nurse, turned holistic coach, international speaker, and author of Heal Yourself. Her work focuses on the connection between mind, body, and emotional health, helping people understand how their internal world influences their physical well-being. Today, we're diving into her journey, what led her out of conventional medicine and into holistic healing, and how she supports others in taking an active role in their health. Let's get into it.
Tell you.
Hello, you beautiful souls. Welcome to Harness the Shift. Today I am joined by Sarah Dawkins from Alicante, Spain. How are you, Sarah?
Yay. And hi to your audience. I'm good, thank you. And you?
I'm doing great. I can't complain. It's the weather is, up and down, right? Up and down. You just flow with it. So today it's a beautiful day, even though it's not sunny. It's always a beautiful day when you wake up, you can be grateful, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So, Sarah, before we begin, I want to acknowledge you. I'm genuinely grateful that you showed up today and that you decided to say yes to coming on to Harness the Shift. And more than that, I want to acknowledge you and how you show up for your clients. And it truly does matter because you never know what other people are going through and how we show up and how that affects other people and what goes on with other people in their lives. And it truly, we really truly are one, right? We are one humanity, and when we all show up and we're firing on all cylinders, we really truly can make a difference. And we don't know who's watching today, but I know that we'll make a difference in someone's life. So I just want to say thank you for showing up today.
Thank you for seeing me.
You are seen. Thank you, Sarah. So with that, welcome to Harness the Shift. And how is it there in Spain? I'm so jelly. Spain is so beautiful. So beautiful. Such a beautiful country.
I think it sounds like we've got the same weather that you've got today. It's a bit grey and cold. The weather's weathering yesterday.
I hear you. The weather is weathering. Isn't that the truth?
Spring yesterday. It's back to winter today.
I know. It just goes on and on and on, right? It's been a strange winter here. Same thing. One day it's nice and it's sunny, and then the next day it's like it's cold. It's very strange winter, especially this year. I'm not sure what's going on, but I like to talk about the weather, and I like the fact that I can talk with people that are like across the pond and Australia and just like, what's going on over there? And it's like, I can't be there, but I'm almost there, right? I'm there in spirit, I guess you could say. So thank you for joining us today. And so let's get into it.
Absolutely.
So you're here on Harness the Shift to talk about your journey and what it is that you do when you show up every day for your clients. So you mentioned when we were talking before, you mentioned about your dark night of the soul as a turning point, and what actually was it about that dark night of the soul that broke you open in that season, and what did it reveal that the traditional past couldn't?
Got goose pimples.
Mm.
What it showed me was that I was in the wrong job. Basically, all my life I only ever wanted to be a nurse, and I couldn't enter nursing because I didn't have the grades, because that's another story about the school and the joining of two schools, the lack of discipline, so it didn't work. So I had to go to college to get the grades to go to nursing school. Did my nursing and loved my job, but this dark night of the soul, things had happened on my journey during my nursing time, and through this dark night of the soul I realised, as much as I wanted to be that nurse, because that's all I'd ever dreamed of being, that actually it wasn't serving me, it wasn't giving me what I was looking for in trying to help people to help themselves. I was helping people to stay in the medical model rather than empowering them to take responsibility back for their health, their life, and work with that and kind of sidestep the medical model.
Yeah, that medical model, huh?
Yeah.
You know, I too have been in that industry in research, so I get it, where you just like, that was part of my dark night of the soul. Like, what am I actually doing to move the needle? And then that's kind of when it all starts in your own journey, and you work your way to peeling away those layers and getting to your purpose. So with that, you were challenged by a nurse about pharmaceuticals one time, right? And what did that moment awaken in you, and how did you redirect your entire approach to health?
Wow. That was my turning point in the first instance, because my mum was a nurse and I went into nursing, and I was 41 when she challenged me, and up to being 41 I only knew doctors, medicines, pharmaceuticals, diagnoses, interventions, hospitals. That was healing, I'm going to say in air quotes. That was what I thought healing entailed. That's what I thought we all did. That's how I was trained to think. So when she challenged me, I just said something about the use of pharmaceuticals at home, and she said, "But why? What do you mean why? We're nurses. That's what we do, right?" And she didn't elaborate. So that sent me, at the end of my shift, I went home and I'm thinking, why would a nurse challenge me about pharmaceuticals? Firstly, what is it about pharmaceuticals? And that led me into the darker side of pharmaceuticals. And also, what else would there be if it's not pharmaceuticals? Because that was a route I'd never taken. And obviously the flip side of the pharmaceuticals, we learnt about drugs and we learnt some of the side effects, but I didn't understand the history. We weren't ever told the true history of how they came about as they are now. So I went down these two huge rabbit warrens in two different directions, and wow, they just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And every night I was researching and gaining more and more information on that, and it blew my mind, because it's like there's all this information out there on the internet. This was 2005. It's information, and I didn't even know it. So part of me was like, how can I not know any of this? And the other part of me was like, wow, this is like mind-blowing but amazing, that I'm finding people healing themselves outside the medical model that I was never taught about.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, this diving down rabbit holes, and it really goes to that. It really goes to the scripture talking about seek and you shall find. It's all out there. The truth is out there. It's just that we have to get to a point where we can walk ourselves to the truth and actually discover the truth, discern from it, and then take action with that information. That am I really doing the right thing here? And I so get it. Like this truly is such a similar thing that I went through in my awakening. because being attached to the pharmaceutical and research, and although the majority of my experience is in medical device, which, most people that it's cardiovascular medical device. So most folks, it's a structural thing that needs to be repaired, whether it's a valve or whatever that may be. But it's caused by all that, right? And you realize, like, the pharmaceutical industry, like, it's tied to petroleum. How is that healing? And so when we ask ourselves that, we come into the world and then it's like we need all this stuff. Like, why? We don't need all of this. And then you look and you see that disease, it's just getting worse and people are getting sicker. And you start to ask yourself questions like, okay, well, if we're doing all of this research and we're spending billions of dollars on research, but yet there is a cure for cancer, but it's not readily available, but we're pumping people full of, chemotherapy and all of these things just to make money. You just sit back and you start to realize, whoa, I got it wrong here. And what can I do to make it right? And I think that that's what you're doing. You're making it right by saying, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to play this game. I know what the truth is, and I'm just going to approach it differently. So I commend you for that, because it's a hard place to be in that dark night of the soul and coming to that realization that, whoa, I'm truly not. I'm not moving the needle. I'm a part of the system, right? But yeah, that whole, and it's not just pharmaceuticals, it's Rockefeller medicine. It's, yes, and I did say Rockefeller medicine. It's the demonization of all of these holistic approaches, right? Because they know it works. And I think it's such an incredible time. People are waking up and they're like, you know what? I want more. I want more. I'm going to go down this rabbit hole and figure out this. And then you start to just dig and find out about parasites. And it's like, what? And knowing that the eastern part of the world already has that figured out, but somehow the Western world is more interested in keeping folks asleep on that subject and making money off the suffering of human beings, which is, I just can't sign off on that. So yeah, I resonate with this so much. So yeah,
it blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah, it blows your mind when you start to think like, and true story, if I may share, that when my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and this was back in, I think it was 97. It was right when I got out of the Air Force, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was on that model, right? Because that's all I knew. And the neighbor across the street was sharing all of these holistic things. Like, she knew exactly what was going on. And we were just not open to it because we were in our programming. We were in our conditioning that, modern medicine's going to save the day. And it didn't. She had a stem cell transplant, and that literally almost killed her. It was terrible what that experience for her. And what happened was everything kind of lay dormant, and she fell. And when she fell over a box at work. She was in retail and she was a manager, and she fell over a box. Like, the box was in the way and she fell over, and she had a tumor in her liver. And as a result, it busted it open and it just spread like wildfire. So it's like a lot of these treatments just kind of holds it off and then it comes back. And so we see that with that whole terminology of remission, right? And yeah, it's It's wild to think that back and how she tried to share all of that and we just weren't open. And that was part of the dark night of the soul, to like, forgiveness for myself for being ignorant, I guess, in a way, and knowing that's not my, that's part of being in this earthly realm. Like we come in and we, the Men in Black, you lose your memory and then you have to remember who you are. But sometimes I often think that I'm like working out some of my mom's stuff, as a part of we can't heal other people, but we can break things through our own healing in our generational lines. So when you talk about healing from the root rather than managing systems, what does that look like in real life for someone who feels stuck?
It's about understanding the message in the symptoms. So our symptoms that we express in our body are not random. They're not. They're linked to the message that our body, our subconscious mind is trying to express. So it's a case of, I help people, clients, to look at what their symptoms are in their body. I don't like diagnoses, because when you get a diagnosis, it's like installing a computer program. So you've got the diagnosis, then you've got all the beliefs around that diagnosis and the life projection around that diagnosis. And it's like, let's just look at the symptoms. What are your symptoms? And what do you think that your body is trying to tell you?
Mm-hmm.
So I help them to see that. And I also ask them to tell me a bit about their childhood, because there's often links to something that's happened in childhood that's now expressing in their body. And I have compassionate conversations with people to help them to understand the wisdom in the symptoms that their body is expressing. And when they see that, we can then work with that. And quite often it can come from a childhood trauma, as in capital T, like physical, emotional, sexual abuse. But it can also come from what we call little t trauma, being made fun of, feeling ostracized, being made to feel different, or feeling that the way you think and feel is wrong, and maybe you felt unseen, unheard, unvalidated. So it's about working with all of these things to reparent, and it's going to sound woo to some people, but inside of us is our inner child, that little child that we were at that time, that felt or was made to feel or felt themselves, because it's about perception, what was going on at that time. So it's that child that felt anxious, worthy, loved, not confident, and they're still inside of us, and they also express in symptoms. So sometimes we can feel fear, and it's not the adult us that's feeling the fear, it's the inner child that's feeling that fear. So there's inner work to do with reparenting the child that we were, that went through whatever it went through. And when we do that, quite often symptoms just dissolve, because we've dealt with the root cause being something that happened in childhood that we suppressed or repressed.
Yeah. We're conditioned to think the body, right? It's always the body when we don't pay attention to the energy portion of it, right? That it's more energy than it is the body, right? And how these emotions can present issues in the tissues, right? And so just off the cuff, okay, so like for instance, if you have a lot of anger that you're dealing with, that manifests mostly in the joints and in the fascia. Is that correct? Is that my understanding?
Anger lives in the liver.
Gotcha.
So we don't detox properly.
Okay.
But rashes, psoriasis, eczema can be anger bubbling up through the skin. When we look at it through the metaphysical lens, we can see how that anger would just bubble up through our body. In joints, it tends to be a holding on or a lack of letting go. So that causes us that stiffness, that lack of mobility, because we still want to hold on to something from the past, or we can't let go of something.
Interesting. Very interesting. I love this. It's so interesting to me. Coming from this field, right? Like it's a whole a mindset shift, excuse me, of how you learned it, and then you have to unlearn it, and then you learn it, right? That because sometimes what are you holding on to? Because letting go is, I think, hard for everybody. And
for the majority of people, I would
yeah,
say. I do know some people that are really chilled and laid back and like whatever, and
I
they
know.
hold on to nothing.
I know. I have who's now a new business partner, and I'm like, teach me, sensei, teach me. Because sometimes that's a hard thing when, you have been so conditioned to like, gotta have control, when we really just don't, right? And it's like, there's certain things we have control over, but there's certain things we don't. And there's certain things that we don't, we just have to let go of that. Like, I can't force anybody to do anything. It's about what I can do, and the change that I can do. So yeah. So you emphasize internal alignment. And so how can someone tell the difference between true alignment and just convincing themselves that they're doing the work? Gotta love that ego.
Yes, then you'll feel it.
Yes.
Because when I went through that deep, dark depression and that dark night of the soul, I desperately wanted to help people and saw nursing as my way of helping them in their vulnerable situations. But going through that dark depression and that dark night of the soul with those awful thoughts, it's like, well, what else is there? How can I still help people when they're vulnerable? Help them to help themselves rather than help them to stay dependent on the doctors and the medical model. And it's really a feeling. Our ego will shout at us and it'll throw emotions at us or invoke emotions within us. Whereas the little tiny voice within us, that's our higher self, inner wisdom, God, the universe, the angels, whatever you want to call it, it speaks quietly and without emotion. So if we can tap back into that little voice in stillness and quietness and just ask it. And if you hear it loud with emotion, that's your ego speaking. We have to detach from that. I see you. Thank you for showing up to protect me.
Yep. Thank you for serving up some anger today, ego.
Yes. And at the end of the day, our ego is our survival mechanism, if you like. It's there to try and protect us because it's holding on to everything that we learned as children with the emotions and the situations and the people. And it's like, oh, that reminds me of that situation and I don't want you to feel like you did then, so I'll just shout at you so we'll bypass that and not have to feel that again. So it's about silencing that ego voice that acknowledges there first and foremost. Acknowledges there, thank it for showing up, because it's a part of a survival skill that we learned to move forward in life. And then just sit with that voice and say, what is it that you need? And for me, it was to help people to take back the responsibility for their health and their lives and step outside that medical model so that they could look after themselves rather than give that responsibility to the doctor, the nurse, the hospital.
Yeah. And do you think maybe people get overwhelmed with, I mean, I know I did in my spiritual journey, that I get overwhelmed with, okay, I got to do this and I got to do that. And the whole like spiritual piece of it, and then the physical piece, and I got to eat this right, and I got to eat that right. So it's like all of these moving parts. And so I tell people, just take one day at a time, right? You change one thing, you move on, and you integrate. So how do you go about coaching somebody through that, where they just feel overwhelmed, like there's so much to change?
Yes. And I through my own learning and writing my book, Heal Yourself, I defined 4 pillars: the mental, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual. And my emotional pillar came last when I did my coach training. I'd only defined the 3 pillars first and foremost. And health and healing both involve addressing all of these. And when you look at them and break all these pillars down, there is such a lot to look at, and it can absolutely be overwhelming. So I, like yourself, I'm like, what do you feel that you could change, that you could absolutely work with? And what change could you make and that would feel relatively easy for you to do? That's the first stepping stone.
Yeah.
Step onto that little by little. Try making that change and sustaining it for 30 days. There was a saying, I can't remember who said it, a little bit of something is better than a lot of nothing.
Yes.
So if they can do a little bit,
yeah,
brilliant, because everything helps.
It does. I think we get so overwhelmed when we get into this space of personal development, right? And where do we start in it? It's just pick something that is like the top priority and start there, and everything else. And it truly does. It truly does. It's like once you start, and it starts to build upon, then sure, you vacillate back into being a little stressed out about things and, that sort of thing. And you have to learn how to coach yourself through that. Because it's you're retraining, right? There's a sense of retraining the mind. So you talked about your book. Talk about your book.
Okay, and I'm just going to say, we're just having this human experience as well.
Yeah.
What humans are.
Right?
Yeah. Give yourself some grace.
Yeah, give yourself some grace. I had to learn that.
It's
sometimes a tough thing when you've been showing up in the world as go, 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 and a high performer or someone who just takes the ball and runs with things, and it's kind of turning it and doing it for yourself, showing up for yourself and being the go-getter for yourself. It is. You have to have a little bit of grace. It goes a long way, right? So talk about your book, Heal Yourself, since you brought that up in this little section here of this podcast. Talk about Heal Yourself. Where can folks get the book? Talk a little bit about it, and then where they can get the book.
Okay, so it first came about when I was healing out of that dark space, and I'd healed so many chronic health problems up to that place over about 10, 12 years maybe. And I thought, well, must be people like me who don't know any of this exists, who aren't even aware that the body heals itself, because I was certainly never taught. So I started writing about my own experiences and all the health problems that I'd healed. And then that little voice, that big voice on my shoulder went, who do you think you are? You're not an author. Nobody's going to read that. I'm like, shut my computer, and it stayed there for 5 years because I'm like, there's just this nagging voice. I'm not an author. Who do I think I am? But one day I just woke up and there was a voice inside my head, you've got to finish this book. Reach out to other people. It's got to be not just your story, but other people's as well. So I did. I reached out on social media. People healing ALS or MND, as we call it in the UK, multiple sclerosis, cancer, Lyme, a whole slew of autoimmune problems, asthma, allergies, endometriosis, so many different health problems, and they'd all stepped outside of pharmaceuticals and healed themselves. And I'm like, just when these people wrote me their stories, because I gave them their own chapter, I'm like, wow, I know I'm on my own journey. I see what's possible for me, but now, holy moly, right. Look at what's really possible. So that's when Heal Yourself was born. I had a deadline because I entered a Hay House competition for a publishing deal. Didn't win one of the top 3 places, and me being me thought, okay, Sarah, that's the universe saying you can't wait 18 months for Hay House to publish your book. You need to publish it and get it out now. So with the help of my husband, I got it onto Amazon and self-published. And so it's on Amazon worldwide, but it's also it's definitely in Barnes and Noble's on their shelf, I believe, in
Wow.
America and in the UK. And it's in the UK in a place called Waterstones. It's one of the big book shops as well, like Barnes and Noble. And you can order it in most bookshops.
That is so awesome. And how long has your book been out?
I published it, I think it's 4 years in June.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So heal yourself. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the book has other folks' healing journeys. So it's basically case studies.
Yes, they all wrote their own
God.
healing journey, and I gave them all their own chapter. And there's two
That's
people healed ALS, and they've both done something entirely different. There's
oh my God.
3 or 4 people healed MS, and I've had another 4 or 5 people on my podcast healed MS, and they've all done something different. There is no one size fits all cancer. People have healed it going vegan, people have healed it going carnivore. It's not the food per se.
Right.
It's just so many different ways to heal yourself.
This is amazing. So amazing. So it's available on Amazon, folks. Here in America can get it on Amazon, and then Waterstone in the UK. And it looks like you have different translations.
I do. The little tiny village that I live in here is very multicultural. So I have it in Spanish, Dutch and French languages too, because not everybody speaks English.
Yeah. This is true. So cool. And I will make sure that I put that in the podcast description where people can go and get your book if they're interested. It sounds like I think I'm interested just because of the research part of it and it being case studies. That is just, and so was it the spirit that did God guide you to do that, to get other people's experience and integrate it into the book?
I believe in spirits, and I think that was the voice that I had. You've got to go out, you've got to get other people involved, and you've got to publish this book. But it's not so strange when you know how the universe works. I was going to say the strange thing that happened was when I was in that dark space, I met a lady. I started dancing, but that's another story, as part of my healing. And one of the ladies that I met, we'll just call her Gifted. And she said, "You'll write a book one day." I'm like, I'm in this dark space. Why would I write a book? What would I write about? And I had no vision whatsoever of me writing this book. And I did.
And you did.
I just I've got to help people to understand what I didn't understand.
Well, you can tell your ego that you're an author now.
Yes.
Yeah, ego, sit down. You did it. I'm so grateful that you pushed through that, because that self-limiting belief can really cause us to not really fully step in. And you fully stepped in, and it's important to share this, right? Because it's, especially in this format, because it's not just you saying it, you have other folks that are saying, hey, I did this, I healed myself. Yeah, pretty cool. So let's talk about core beliefs, and how do you begin to identify the ones that are running your clients' lives under the surface?
So the biggest and easiest way to recognize a core belief, whether you know it or not, is when you're triggered. Mm-hmm. Your triggers show you where your boundaries are and what you believe. And when we're triggered, it's a case of asking ourselves, what was it about what was said or done that's made me feel so frustrated or angry or sad? Or what is it that I believe in what's happened, what I've seen, what I've heard, what I've done? And then, is that really true? Do I really believe? So for me, being challenged about using pharmaceuticals, I went home and like, why would you say that? And what else is there? But so you need an open mind to challenge your belief, because we've all got this cognitive bias, and we believe what we believe because that's what we believe and that's what our family believed, and nobody's ever challenged it. So we need to dig into what do I believe about myself? And a lot of my clients believe that they're not confident, they're not competent, they're not worthy of love, of receiving. And all of those are suppressed emotions from childhood. And as we have these compassionate conversations around their childhood, I can challenge their belief. I call it out, but compassionately, I'm like, is that really true? Can you really not do that? Are you really not loved? Are you really not worthy? And it's just a case of the answer is yes or no. And if you can find something that you say, well, my friends think I'm worthy, or my friends love me, or my friends have said all this feedback about me, if that positive exists, then this negative thought that you've got about yourself cannot possibly be true, because your friends are bringing counter evidence. So it really is about looking at things that frighten you, worry you, challenge you, trigger you, and dig into, what do I believe about what's just happened? And is it 100% true, or can I find evidence to counter what I believe? And if you've got an open mind, you can look at that and then start to challenge that limiting belief, because it can't possibly exist if there's counter evidence.
I love that. It's so true. It's like we make these, I think the ego likes to orchestrate things that are not really real. So in your work, you integrate physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual healing, Where do most people resist going deeper, and why do you believe that is so?
I think both the spiritual and the emotional. And I say the spiritual because I think a lot of people don't understand what the entirety of that is. It's not about God and religion specifically. It can be if that's your beliefs. If that's not your beliefs, it doesn't have to be that. It's about coming home, really, to listen to that little inner voice, whatever name you want to give it, and reconnecting with that. Because many of us, when we were children, we disconnected from that because of what we were told, how we felt about what we were told. And in feeling wrong, we took our mind out of our body, so we didn't have to think about what was going on and feel what was going on. So it's a case of that disconnection stops us feeling. So we can suppress that emotion. We don't feel it because our mind's not really in our body. So the spiritual aspect also contains things like authenticity. Your community, who are you surrounded by? Are these people that lift you up or drain you? So the spiritual pillar isn't just God and religion. As I said, there's a whole other lot of things within that. And then the emotional pillar. I've had people say, past the past, I'm not going back there, I'm not going to heal it, I'm never going to forgive those people. And for those people, I just have compassion, because I don't know what they've been through some of the time. They don't always explain what's happened in their lives. They want to keep the lid on that. They don't want to open that can of worms. And that's fine. I can just wish them well on their journey, send them love and compassion, and allow them to live their lives how they want to live it. But for other people, if they can, so I had a lady recently who came to me. She was in her late 70s, and for 50 years she had had gastrointestinal problems. She'd had no end of interventions, every year the same interventions, scopes and cameras and medicines and scans and MRIs, and everything was nothing abnormal detected, NAD. Everything's normal. And she's like, 50 years she'd suffered with these symptoms. With one session with me, I followed up the week after, and she's like, for the first time ever, my insides are relaxed and pain-free. One session.
Wow.
Because it wasn't a physical thing.
No.
It was an emotional thing. Right. And I helped her see where it started and how it started and how she was holding it. And we did a little bit of inner child work. And honestly, a week later, she had the best week ever because her inside was relaxed.
Yeah.
And it's the emotional pillar is about understanding that sometimes the symptoms that we've got, or more often than not, actually, it's an emotion that we didn't express, that we suppressed or repressed. And it got trapped in our body in whatever position. And when we can see that and listen to it and then help it to express itself, it can leave us. And in leaving us, once that emotion is expressed and seen, we don't have the symptoms. The symptoms just resolve.
That's pretty amazing. It's true. It's true. I'm like, there's something there that you said that I'm like, oh my gosh, like light bulb. So, well, I'm going to table it and we'll talk about it. But my goodness, gosh, you're really sharing some good stuff here. So when we help others, right, we actually help ourselves, right? Because it's always an evolving dynamic, right? It's not just I'm healed, right? When we interact with people, that can sometimes, what you had mentioned, bring up triggers. And so when you work with other people, do you find yourself sometimes getting triggered? And how do you handle that? How do you work through that?
I think I do, actually.
That's good.
I really don't. So on my podcast that was released yesterday, it was a lady who was sexually assaulted. And I said to her in the pre-talk, I'm like, we don't need to go into the details of what happened, just we'll name it and we'll move on to the healing. As a young child, I was sexually assaulted, molested. And actually, because I've done so much work around that, it didn't trigger me. I was able to have compassion and understanding for her. And I think because I've gone through so much in my life, I'm able to relate to people and have compassion for them for what they're going through, whether it's, emotional, like truly traumatic emotional situations like hers, or whether it's just like the weight of the world and holding on to all of that emotion, but also physical stuff as well, can be really challenging. And just so no, I don't get triggered, honestly.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it just goes to show that this is your purpose. It's so your purpose because you're able to really embody that true compassion. And that's really what it's all about, is learning to be compassionate and understanding. We may not understand what other people go through. And we may not be able to even fathom some of the folks that I've talked to in my life, that what they've been through, I can't even imagine. But at the same time, when you go about your healing journey, you can learn to embody that. And it's kind of like if you have gone through it, or you have gone through hard times, you can kind of hold on to that, the emotionality of it, and kind of put yourself in that lens where you can offer compassion. I think most people don't want you to figure it out for them. It's just, I just see what I'm going through, like acknowledge, or people just want to be seen, I think, basically. Yes. And they want to be
huge.
Yeah.
Yes.
They just want to be seen,
heard and validated.
Yes.
And because a lot of us weren't as children, we look externally for that validation because we don't know. We've severed that tie, if you like, with that internal validation. So we have to learn to come back into ourselves and validate ourselves and stop looking externally for it.
Yeah. And you speak about energetic or vibrational alignment. How do you help someone trust what they feel and when they've been conditioned to override it?
Again, it comes back to like the ego and the inner voice. It's about sitting with it and feeling into it. We can go into the logics and write a list of all the pros and all the cons of what we logically think, but actually it's a feeling. And our soul knows. And like my own experience with the dark night of the soul, I was so conflicted because I only ever wanted to be a nurse. And I was Sarah the nurse. And when I was Sarah, there was always the nurse on the end of it. It was not just Sarah.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know who Sarah is because it's Sarah the nurse. And that conflict was huge within me, because who am I if I'm not Sarah the nurse? And I only ever wanted to be a nurse. And how can I help people the way I want to help people if I'm not a nurse? And at the time, I didn't know. I didn't know about coaching. So it's sit with it and ask your soul what it needs, because it will speak. It will either speak in words, you'll hear a word or two in your mind, or you'll see a picture, or within the next day or so, something around you will give you the answer, whether it's a billboard, whether it's a song on the radio. Listen to me, the radio.
I love it. Oh, the radio. I'm like, when you said radio, it's like, ooh, Donna Summer.
Yes. But there will be an answer. We just have to be aware and looking for the answer.
And that requires presence, right?
It does, for sure.
And that's a hard thing, moving out of being distracted with everything that's going on in the world into a state of where we can be present, so that we can see those things. We can see how the universe says, hey, you're right on track. Keep going. We call them glimmers over here. So whenever we see these glimmers or signs or synchronicities, we know that we're on the right path. So it's a good thing. So you talked about a client earlier, but let's talk about a client that you may have had that everything shifted. What was the actual turning point in their healing? Is there someone that you could speak to off the top of your head?
Yes, I had a midlife lady who came to me and said she wasn't going to cry. The minute she came, she cried, which is great, because when we're crying, we're releasing all that stress, all that emotion. It's just keep releasing it and releasing it. So I'm like, please don't stop it. Just allow the tears to fall. It's healing. Through her backstory, it transpired that her beliefs around growing up was that her parents didn't love her, and they gave her away to family members at different periods over the years for different time periods. And as we got talking more and more, her mum had mental health problems. And it sounds very much like she was sectioned, so she had to go into a mental health institution. So to care for her daughter, they gave her to family to be loved and looked after and cared for out of an act of love. And she just saw that she was being given away, passed from pillar to post, because she wasn't loved, she wasn't worthy, and her parents didn't want her. So when I helped her to see that actually it was an act of love, because her mum was going into the mental health institute, rather than an act of hate or not worthiness, and she saw it through different eyes, different lens, through a different perspective. She realized how that filter of not feeling wanted or loved had really affected her whole life. And when we turned her perspective around, and she's like, so I really was loved. Yes, you really were loved. You were given to family members to be looked after and continue to be loved, not because you weren't loved. Her whole life changed.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing when you look back when you're a child and how things, like your perception of certain things, may have been off, right? And it just goes to show you that here again, being compassionate to the fact that other people are going through this shit, and most people are just trying to do their very best. And I call it pivoting. Like, I've got responsibilities and I've got to pivot, and how do I do this without, you minimize the what's the word I'm trying to the fallout, right? Like, if you're going through something, whether it's something with your health or with your mental health, and you're just trying to figure it out. And I've gone through that in my journey, going on this journey, right? Because you start to heal, other folks around you may not be doing that same level of healing, and you start to drift away from those folks. And it's not that you don't love them, it's that you're just on that path, and that's just the way that this path is. When you start to heal and not, like, say, a lot of mine was, I used to planes, trains, automobiles, I used to tip it back, and so I don't tip it back like that. So I don't really resonate in that vibration anymore. And so as a result, there's folks that fell away from that. And so, and this is off the cuff, we didn't review this, but I know you can handle this question. When folks are going through their journey, healing journey, and they're doing the work and they're peeling back things and changing these behaviors that are good for their health, like maybe they're not drinking as much, or maybe they're not smoking, or maybe they're not eating like some folks have challenges with what they eat. How do they manage those feelings of, well, I'm leaving somebody behind, like the opposite of what she was feeling? And then how do we work it out so that the other folks are not taking it personal? It's such a conundrum, I think, sometimes.
It is, and it will just happen naturally. As we move forward in our healing, people will naturally fall away. And it's not that we've severed ties with them or them with us. They just fall away, if you like, as we raise our vibration, as we're getting healthier and we're healing our past, healing our toxic behaviors, healing our thoughts. People will fall away. It's a natural process. But the beauty is the person that we are becoming will attract different people who will resonate with who we're becoming. So in a way, it's not really a loss. It's just a natural separation to allow the space for other people to come in.
I love that. It's so true. It's so true. But I do believe that some folks get hung up on that. So sometimes we need to be reminded that it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. So you say the missing link isn't another tool, but it's the structured inner work. What does that structure look like in practice?
It's first and foremost being compassionate with ourselves and giving ourselves that grace. You know, there's all those tools out there, and you can get stuck in healing and using tools, and then so you're not sick anymore, but you're still healing and using the tools for support. It's more about enjoying your life. What do you love to do, and doing more of it? And that's it. That's the crux of it. And yet some of us can find that or look at our lives and think that we're too busy to do more of what we love. And what we need to do is look at what's draining us. What can we let go of? What's not serving us anymore? And that frees up time for us to do more of what we love. So it's not a structure, if you like. It's more live your life.
Yeah. Live your life, subtract the things that don't serve, and add the things that do.
Yes.
And then when we do that, yeah, absolutely. And when we do that, we get into alignment, and then we can extrapolate that wisdom from other folks and keep learning and taking in. And absolutely, I think living life is, let's talk about that real quick. How life is meant to be enjoyed, right? That it doesn't have to be so serious. So what do you do for fun?
I walk my dog out in nature twice a day.
I love that.
And because I live up, as I've told you, I'm in the mountains, up in the mountains, about 40 minutes away from Alicante. Mm-hmm. And we are 1,400 feet above sea level. And we're surrounded by mountains. You know, we're on the valley floor at 1,400 feet. Yeah. So it's just beautiful to walk the dog in the peace and the quiet. Got a oh gosh, what's it called? A steel-tongued drum that I just plink
So
plonk.
cool.
Yes, it sounds amazing. It's so ethereal sound, and it's just I'm not musical, but I can just plink and plonk with my drumsticks on it, and it sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
So there's that. And my husband and I go out together. We make 2 days a week where it's our time together and we do things together. Because obviously we both work, but those are our days, set days every week, and we just do things together.
Yeah. The being in nature is such a healing thing. I think that's something that has been a part of my journey too. I love hiking and being in nature and the birds and the trees and just all of these living things that are there. And it helps you, from my perspective, it helps me stay grounded and know that, life sometimes can be a little challenging, but you can escape.
Yeah.
You can go up into the mountains and be with everything that is what I call closer to God, right? I don't know. It's quiet. You don't have the noise. It's just amazing. So it's cool. It's really cool.
And the bird song is known to soothe your nervous system. So just being out listening to the bird song, you will automatically calm.
I have a bird story, and that happened I'd say about a month and a half ago. I was working on something and it was like confirmation to me. So I went downstairs to fill up my coffee, and I'm standing at the sink and I'm looking out the window and I see not one, not two, not three, but 4 stellar jay birds. So they're blue birds and they have like a black mock and they're called a stellar jay. And I was like, oh wow. And so that's why it's so important to be present, because had I not been present and caught up in what I was caught up in, and am I on the right track? Am I not on the right? Those things where we're so caught up. Had I not been in that present moment, I would have missed that. And that's a glimmer. That's a sign from the universe that, hey, you're on the right track. And so it's just a testament that you don't need humans all the time to tell you that you're on the right track. God will send little messengers. So yeah, I love birds. I think they're so fascinating. They truly are.
And butterflies, we're surrounded by butterflies as well at the moment, because there's
yeah,
on the ground in all the orchards is wild arugula. And it's rampant. Honestly, it's about 2 feet tall, and there's just white blossom everywhere. And there's birds, there's bees, there's butterflies, there's insects. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, the butterflies. I love butterflies. Butterflies are they're beautiful in the whole symbolistic ways, right? They really truly are. So, if anyone listening feels overwhelmed, because I always say this, if we have one person that takes something away from any podcast we do, you're on your podcast or any of the guests that come on my podcast, if they can take away something from this and move the needle in the positive direction, then we've really done what we've needed to do. So if someone is listening and they're feeling overwhelmed and fatigued and maybe all of that's manifesting in their body, what is one small, simple thing that they can do to move themselves out of that?
Okay, well, I'll just reiterate something I said earlier, because I think it's relevant, is to look at what drains you. Because we've all got something that drains us. It might be something, it might be some things that drain us. And what can we let go of? Because it's easy to go, well, I should be doing this and that and the other and add more to your plate. But actually, what can we get rid of? What can we take off our plate? is a huge starter. Rather than adding, we're going to subtract something.
Right.
So that'll reduce the drain on our energy.
Absolutely.
But a really big thing as well is to understand stress. And you alluded to it earlier about control. We try and control everything out there because we want it to be right or perfect or whatever vision we've got in our mind. And actually, we can only control and are responsible for ourselves. So if we can let go of all of this, which we cannot control, it's like herding cats, and just come back to what can I control myself? How can I just look at my responses? How am I reacting to the world? Am I on autopilot, just going through the day? Come back into yourself, become present and conscious of what's going on in your life, and let go of trying to control all that external.
Yeah. Such great advice, Sarah. It's so true. I'm such a big fan of being mindful. That's been, it's sometimes it's hard for folks at first, right? To be that way, especially, if you're prone to being distracted. Thank you for sharing that, because I echo that too, that it's the mindfulness, right? And being present and what is my mind serving up today, and understanding that, you know what, I appreciate you serving that up. Thank you for serving up the anger today, or thank you for serving up the fear today, but I don't really need that right now. I'm gonna be in love right here, and I'm gonna do the things that I need to do, and subtract these things that may not be in my best interest, are causing whatever it may be, conflict or discomfort or pain, rumination, all of that. So, well, do you have anything else that you want to share with our listeners today?
If that's okay, I'd like to share my podcast. It's called
Yes.
Mind Body Medicine for Self-Healers. And it's a continuation of my book, Heal Yourself. I interview or just have compassionate conversations with people who've healed themselves to show that my audience that it is possible. And all my guests share their diagnosis and how they healed themselves, so that my listeners can try something of what they've done on their own journey to give them hope.
I have someone that I'm going to put in touch with you. It is an amazing story. His story is amazing. And I think he would be a great guest on your podcast. And this is what this is all about, harness the shift, right? Is that we're harnessing this shift in mindset and consciousness and healing and all of these things, right? But it's also about co-collaboration. It's about, because with that, we create abundance for others. And so thank you for sharing that. And where can they find your podcast?
I'm literally virtually anywhere, Apple and Spotify and Amazon and YouTube. And then there's lots of little tiny indie sites I've found my podcast on as well. So
Wonderful.
Just search for it, and I'm sure it'll pop up on a platform that you watch or listen to.
And can you say it one more time? Also, I will make sure that I put that in the podcast description. So all of your contact information will be in the podcast description if folks resonated with you and they want to work with you. And then also your podcast. So if you could just, while you're at it, talk about the podcast a little bit more, and then go into where people can find you on social media.
Thank you. So I'm open to anybody joining me on my podcast that's healed a medical diagnosis, and for them to share what they did on their own healing journey. And I have to be frank here, because I've had so many people come to me they healed with a pill or a potion or a supplement that they developed. So ultimately they're saying that you can only heal whatever they've had with their And that's not what I'm about. I'm about sharing things that my listeners can take away that are tangible, that they can try on their own journey without having to spend any money to start them off. So it's literally people sharing the medical diagnosis and how they healed themselves, what they did. Yes, some people used therapies and treatments and supplements, but that wasn't the crux of it. They did a lot of other things that the listeners can take away and start with. It's called Mind Body Medicine for Self-Healers. It's on all the main and lots of indie podcast channels as well as YouTube. And you can find me on my website, www.sarahdawkins.com.
Wonderful. And you're on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, and all my links are on my
and
website.
X and all that. And like I said, I'll make sure that that's in the podcast description so that if you did resonate with Sarah today, you can go and find her. So, Sarah, thank you so much. Just one last input. Anything else that you want to share before we end today?
I'd just like to share what a beautiful host you are, Jay, and it's been a pleasure talking to you on your podcast and with your listeners. And I hope that from everything that we've both shared combined, that they take something away that will help them on their own journey, whether that's spirituality, healing, mental health work, whatever it is. I hope they take something away from both of our conversations.
You know, that's my hope every time I get on here. We show up, right? Is that someone can take something away. It's truly an amazing time to be alive and people stepping into their healing journeys. And just, I want folks to know that they're supported because it is tough. It is hard and it requires you to be brave. But there is so much goodness on the other side of that journey. So thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom today. This has been an amazing podcast. I've learned a lot and I learn every time. And it's just, I'm truly grateful. I'm truly grateful that I listen to my soul. And when it was get podcast guests and how am I supposed to do that? And you don't know until you get out there and you start asking the questions and then it just falls into place. It's pretty cool.
It does indeed. It does.
Pretty cool.
Thank you.
We definitely need to have you on again. So thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us. I appreciate it.
Cheers, Jay.
Cheers. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to Harness the Shift podcast. And until next time, keep harnessing the shift. That's a wrap. Thank you to our guest today. And if you would like to learn more about their work, all their links will be located in the podcast description. A quick shout out to our sponsor, LifeWave. I am a brand partner. These patches support energy, recovery, and overall wellness. And you can find out more about them under the central link in my bio, the Hoobie link, HOO.B/Harness the Shift with Jay. All my offerings, including my coaching program when it's released, plus my contact information and social media links are also available there, as well as in the podcast description. Thanks again for listening. I am Jay. I'll see you next episode on Harness the Shift.